My name is Vanessa Willardson with BYU-Idaho Radio, and today joining me in the studio is Jean Brown, who is the author of Prayers and Paychecks, A Guide for Mothers Who Work. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jean.
Hey, so happy to speak to you and your interest. Thank you.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about your book. What is it about, and what demographic does it speak to?
Well, let me tell you first a little bit about my book. I think it's for any mother who works. And it was the book that I longed for because I wanted someone to understand my dilemma. I mean, I was desperate for some validation because I felt conflicted and longed for answers because we have a big family, which is what I wanted, 13 children, 11 whom are adopted. We went from 5 children to 10 children in 1 year. So we had 5 in diapers and 5 in car seats. So I prayed, fled, and sweat blood to find these children, but raising 13 children very close in age was more than a full-time occupation. No one cared more about them than I did, and I loved being a mother. But I also loved to work, and I chose to work. And we needed the income, but we could have survived financially, but it would have been really challenging. So I wanted to contribute to my family. I worked hard to grow a business, and it brought me a lot of satisfaction. But I consider myself a faithful member of the church, and I'm committed to it, and I believe that we receive personal revelation when we seek it. So I always wondered, was I doing the right thing? And mothers, no guilt. I mean, there isn't a mother who is working that doesn't feel guilty. And the judgment comes from all sides, especially yourself. And when I was working, mothers were not sanctioned to work by our church leaders. And in fact, we were told the opposite, that we absolutely shouldn't work, and that the only ones that were sanctioned to work were single mothers, and they were to be pitied. So it's just sort of a catch-22 to me, Vanessa. We encourage women to get an education and be successful, but then we frown on them if they choose to use their education to do something in addition to full-time mothering and to earn money. So I think it's much easier today. My son says they don't even need that book today because about 50% from the statistics I've looked at work, mothers work, and that is my audience, those who are concerned about a mother working, the mothers who work. And although they have more choices, they can still feel guilty and wonder if they've made the right decision. So I believe, and I came to know, that mothers can really study this out and get a clear reason for working. Why do they want to work? Is it okay? What's a good job to get? Can they rather than just do a part-time job, can they be paid well? So I think through personal revelation that mothers can find the best path for them and their family. But this takes time and effort, and this book walks them through that journey because I believe God and our heavenly parents are as concerned about families and us mothers as anybody on the planet. And they will help us figure this out. And then once you have that confirmation that you're okay, that God is helping you, then you can go forward without that guilt, which weighs on you, which you communicate to your children and your spouse, and then everybody's feeling like they're picked on because mother has to work. But we can turn that around. If mama ain't happy, no one's happy. We can turn that around to if mama is happy, everyone's happy. And I felt like it was really hard to do both, and that's why I've been really upfront in this book about telling the hard things that you have to do, but that if you can thrive. A working mother and her family can thrive while the mama works.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jean. It sounds like this is such a shared experience with many women. I read that I believe it was 60 women that you were able to get comments and stories from who also were having experiences working and being a mother. How did you gather those stories?
I just put it out to all the people that I knew and said, spread this out to all the mothers that you know who work. And they came in, and they're so, to me, touching because like they're instant friends because I read their stories and go, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know how that feels. So that, I think, is a good piece of the book because it's real and it's from mothers that are either have worked or are working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned mom guilt. Is that a common theme with a lot of the moms that are sharing their stories?
I think yes, mom guilt is forever. I mean, even if you're a mother and don't work but like to do something you want to do 3 afternoons a week, you feel guilty if you're not there full time. But I think you can go away and get recharged and come back and be a better mother than you were by just staying home and slogging through it, even if you need the break but don't feel like you can take one or afford to take one. So I think mom guilt is there 100%. I think what I did is I did it the wrong way. I kind of just put my head down and said, my husband was a bishop, I had lots of kids, there was 100 reasons why people could look at me and say, what in the heck is she doing? But I just sort of put my head down and shouldered through it and said, I'm going to make this work, I'm going to make this work. And on those days when it works, you're flying high. But on those days when, kids are falling through things are falling through the cracks, you get a parent-teachers conference that says, where's your kids' assignments? You start to worry, have I done the right thing? And I just think that God helped me through all that. And that's what I'm trying to tell mothers now, that God is on your side and will help you through this if you just tune in and really listen and recognize that he's blessing you, or that otherwise we would have never survived. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You were mentioning judgment from people, like maybe you were worried about people judging you for working. Do you have any advice for women who are working right now, who are mothers, who might be dealing with judgment and how they can go about that the best way?
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, we'd all go to Relief Society and say, I'm okay, you're okay, mm-hmm. and not judge each other. But it happens from all sides. And I think what really helps is, first, if you have a vision for who, and you feel confirmed that what you're doing is the right thing, then I think you speak up about that. I mean, you don't have to confront anyone, but you just say, you know what, I'm trying my best here, and I think this is the right choice for me. And other mothers or other people will understand that because they're in a position of trying to make the right choices themselves as well. It's when we kind of come in with a little bit of defiance and say, yeah, well, if the church was only this, or if, my friends really supported me, then we start to resist each other and fight like we're on two sides of the battle. But if we can start being really open with, yeah, these are my challenges. How are you feeling about this? In what you're doing with your kids, then we'll come to a common ground and say, we're all on the same page here, trying to be the best parents and people that we can be. So I really believe that being open about it, open about your challenges, open about, I really feel confirmed this is the right thing for me to do. But I can tell you, some days it's really hard for me to do that. So, I feel conflicted at times too. Then we are sharing rather than fighting.
Do you feel like the openness has increased since you started raising kids, just in those years that have passed?
I think it has opened a lot. And you just have to see the church recognizing women who are holding jobs who are now in their presidencies, their general presidencies. I mean, I've gone back through history, and there were prophets' wives that worked. So it's all kind of under the radar. And so I feel like if it's more discussed, then there wouldn't be such a stigma about it. I think it's gotten a lot better. But what I see in Relief Society is, and that's kind of our realm of where we hear about it is, oh yeah, I work and just rush on. But if we shared some of the experiences from it, it might bring us closer together rather than separate us. And the working and the stay-at-home moms should share that as well. I mean, it's a tough job to do it and do it well and not lose your brain. So I think it's gotten better. I've worked with the young adults for the last few years in New York City, and I find that they still feel that tension of they're there to do a career, but if they were to have a family, they still feel that it's not quite as accepted. So I do think there's still a place for it. The other piece, though, Vanessa, that I want to emphasize in my book also is that sometimes as mothers, we just, we need some extra money. We're a little short at the end of the month, so we take a part-time job, and then years later, you're still working that part-time job. And that can work, and that's fine. But I'm trying to get the mothers to make a conscious decision about, I am going to work and I'm going to contribute financially. And so I think that being an entrepreneur, which is what I did, is started a business, and is that it makes it really hard, but it also makes the flexibility possible. I mean, I would have been fired in a month with 13 children at a regular job, because there just would have been too many exceptions that I would have needed with that many children. But as an entrepreneur, then I can have that flexibility to come and go as I want and work crazy hours, when I need to. And so I think women are really smart. I mean, even if you look at there's statistics that if there's women on a board of directors for any business, they will increase their percentage of profit. And because they have a whole different way of thinking of things that can add to that company. And that's the way I believe that women in the church are so smart and have so much to contribute. It's kind of like those early Utah days when they recognized that and worked together to allow that to happen, but that they can really contribute financially to the family, which can be a real blessing, and not just, I'm doing this little thing on the side, and that kind of makes them maybe unhappy about that working. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I know that you include the stories from other working mothers in your book, but do you include your own as well?
Yeah, I do. I include a lot of stories. I guess just because I had a lot of children in a really close age, I think that I can, and because I had a demanding work, I think that it's helpful to share my stories that were good and bad, to help give people some ideas of how to make things work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Are there any stories that stick out to you or stand out to you in the book that you would like to share specifically?
Sure. I'll kind of share a story of how I got started. I had a nursing degree, and my husband had a dental degree, but we were doing some additional education. And so we didn't have our licenses up to date. We'd lived overseas. And so came back to the United States, had 2 little boys, and we were out of money completely. And so some medical students in our ward said, hey, we're doing a rotation. Come live in our house for free, and while you try to get your licenses and get your jobs back, etc. And one day at lunch, I was serving the ultimate Kraft macaroni and cheese. I think it was 25 cents a box then. And I was serving that in these plastic bowls with water to drink to my boys for lunch. And they ate the entire package. And then they said to me, "Hey, Mom, we want more." And something just clicked in my head. I said to them, "I don't have any." And they probably said, "Okay," got down and ran away and thought, "Okay, we probably had enough anyway," a whole package between two of them. But something clicked in my head, and it was like a real epiphany for me. And I thought, I am never going to be in the position again where I can't provide for my children. And that's me. I don't know. It just started me. Has driven me to just continue to be able to make an income so that I wasn't put in that position. And that kind of sounds dramatic, but it really was a turning point for me to know that I myself had to make sure that I could provide.
Yeah, when you decided to go to work after that experience, did you deal with any judgment from friends or family at all?
Lots of judgment. And, I had infertility, and people would come up to me and say things like, your home teachers would come over and go, pull a lesson out of the ensign that was purpose about mother's work, and then at the end of the lesson say, now, I think just following this counsel that you should consider having a family instead of working. So, you're real sensitive to that. I could have brushed it off, but I chose to be kind of like, hurt about that. And I remember going to President Benson had just given this talk about a mother's working, and they passed out a pamphlet about not working, and going to Lake Powell, and all my brothers and sisters were there, and we were all on the top just kind of enjoying ourselves. And then my brother just turned to me and called me out and said, you are doing the wrong thing, and you shouldn't be working. And you start to just internalize all that and just start looking at your kids and going, okay, are they going down? Is my marriage going to fail? Is God not going to bless me because of this? And I talk about all these things in the book. Why do you work? Because you're well, anyway, I'll get off the track. But anyway, it happened over and over again where you just felt like you were a sinner if you chose to work outside your home. And anyway, yeah, it was like I say, you internalize that and start to believe that. And that's why I feel so strongly about writing this book, to say to mothers, this is a decision between you and God. Certainly your spouse. I talk about, if your spouse doesn't agree, what do you do if he doesn't support you? But certainly you have to come to that decision yourself. But then when I look back on it, Vanessa, every time every time I got in a scrape, I would just go to my knees pleading and saying, help me, help me. And we got through it. We weathered it. The crises came with the kids or the business and I recognize now when I look back on it, God was helping me every step of the way. He was answering those pleading prayers, but I could have made my life so much easier by just recognizing that He was there with me. I was making the right decision. Just hold on, and then it will work out. And then you're a partner with God in this, rather than you're doing something wrong and why are you doing this? But it really is. Now I go back and look at those talks and that information from that era. What they really were saying is, take care of your children. And it's what the Family Proclamation, I think the Family Proclamation is a wonderful advocate for all mothers, working or not working, because it says you're nurturing you and your husband are partners in taking care of these children. Yes, I'm a nurturer. Yes, he can make a living, but it doesn't have any, all it really says is take care of your family. And we were doing everything we could to take care of our family. So I didn't need to feel so guilty. I was following what God was telling me to do, but it was my thoughts, my like self-judgment or anticipating someone's judgment that made it worse.
When did you reach the point where you stopped feeling guilty?
You know, I don't know that there was an exact moment, but you start to see some success with your children and some success with your business, and that's very validating to you. You start to feel happy. That is validating. So then you're going, well, you're feeling guilty, but this is working so far, or this is making you feel happy. I sold my business, and really, I said it's the happiest day of my life because it was always a concern and a responsibility to run a business, but it was also the happiest day of my life because it gave us some financial freedom that will bless my family for generations. And then again, it's just kind of those positive experiences that I think you start saying, yeah, maybe this is okay. Maybe I'm okay. I never had an epiphany to say, heck with you mothers and you judgers, I'm doing okay. Never had that feeling. I was always, I just think as a mother, I became more spiritually in tuned because I needed his help more. And that was the revelation to me when I started to really write the book and think about my feelings. I realized that because of what my need, I came closer to God more than I ever would had I just stayed home. For me personally. I'm not selling this for everybody, but for those who want to or need to or choose to work, this can help them.
Yeah. One little question I had, just for the details, what was the business that you started? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I have Gene Brown Research, or JBR Research, and we did drug studies for pharmaceutical companies. It was from my nursing background and my business background. And so we tested new drugs to see if they worked and if they were safe. And I had a 26-bed facility in Salt Lake City, and it still exists. It's a very successful business.
Wow.
And they're doing very well. So.
Wow, that's so impressive. I love that you were able to use your degree.
And we should, like I say, they're smart women that that we need. We need their expertise and their knowledge. Mm-hmm. And all the other traits that make them really, really good. I just think, too, you worry so much that it's going to wreck your kids. And you worry so much that it's going to hurt your marriage. And I found that it brought us closer together. Because I then understood how hard it was to make money. So I'm not frivolous in spending it. And we had to come together as a team to, there was no choice that was left to one person or not. We sort of divvied it up as to what we kind of liked. I like to cook better than he does, that kind of thing. But it really, we have a really strong relationship and very close. And I think us both working helped that to happen. Anyway, just another side effect that can be positive.
Yeah. One thing you were talking about earlier was spouses maybe not agreeing with mothers working, and it sounds like you were able to have a great situation there. But do you have any advice to mothers who are going to work who have a spouse that might not agree with them doing that?
I think it should start early, and I think it should start before you're in a relationship. I'll give you an example. I taught entrepreneurship at BYU, Hawaii, and I would teach my classes and say, what are you going to do to support your spouse who may want to work? And one student said, yeah, I'm being shunned right now because when everybody asks me where I'm going to go for my job, I say, I'm going to go wherever my wife gets accepted to law school. And others there was two dental students in the class, and I said, what? They raised their hand and they said, I hope my wife doesn't work because I want to work and then I want to come home and just make sure that the house is taken care of and the kids are taken care of and I can relax. And we all understand that. I mean, we'd all like somebody there at our disposal to make life perfect for us when we walked in the door. But I think it should start before the relationship when you say, I'd like to work and I intend to work or I intend to go to school or I want to get an advanced degree. At that stage is where I think it should happen. And it would be great if, they sought some counseling about it or, really delved into it. I think you meet a lot of spouses that may be really adamant against it. And I think then you just kind of have to go slowly, maybe. Say, obviously if there's a financial need, they'll feel more pull towards that. But I think you've got to ease the spouse's guilt because oftentimes what they're feeling is some cultural rhetoric that says you're a bad husband if your wife has to work. So I think you have to talk about that and help them to see that they're okay. And then you have to maybe start slow. What I suggest is maybe you say, okay, let me start part-time or, let's get it so we can, and I talk in the book about, what are the things that we need to think about with the kids and childcare and the, backup help and things so that we can make this as successful as we can. I think spouses need to get away from the children and take needed time away for just the two of them. Just to talk and say what's working, what isn't working, but just to sleep and eat pizza and watch movies by themselves. So I think you got to have that open conversation in the very beginning to say, do we see eye to eye? Because if I really wanted to work and my husband said over my dead body, it would probably be a relationship that I wouldn't want to continue with. And I think you will know. One of the stories that I'm thinking from the book is a woman said, I never thought that I should work. And then all of a sudden it came to me, go start it. Go to work and do this. And she said, I couldn't understand it because I love to be a stay-at-home mother. But I followed that prompting, and she said, 2 years later, my husband had a serious accident, and I'm now the breadwinner. And now I look back and say, yes, that was meant to be. That's the kind of inspiration that I think that you have to seek with your spouse. I remember going to the temple, and we had 11 children, 10, 11, 12, 13, 10 children, and very close age. And I had this tape going off in my head that always said, there's another child, go look for him. And it was kind of like a third job, going to look for the children. And I talked to my husband about it, and he said, no, we've got our hands full. We're up to our ears. And I said, let's go to the temple and talk about this, and let's pray about this. We went to the temple. We were in the celestial room whispering, and I said, what do you think? And he said, no way. This isn't, we've got our hands full, Jean. And I said, no, I feel so strongly about this. I just know that this is what we should do. And because I felt strongly enough about it, he let me go forward. And, or not let me, but he was supportive of me going forward. And so I think that when the mother is feeling really directed about that, that really helps. And, you know, it wasn't until years later that certain incidences happened that I share in the book where he said, okay, now I know those were the children that we were supposed to have, and you were absolutely right. And that was 13 children, where he came, after 13 children, that he came to that conclusion. But he had enough faith in me to support me in it and believe that I knew I was getting an inspiration to do the right thing. So I think that you can determine in a relationship before you get to a point of, I want to work, why don't you want to let me? It's that shared respect for each other that I'll support you in what you want to do.
Yeah.
I think that that's what you seek.
I like that you bring up the inspiration that you were receiving in the temple, because it goes into my next question. But the book is called Prayers and Paychecks. Do you think that since you started working, your prayers and your relationship with God changed?
Improved.
Dramatically.
Yes, because I needed him. It was a hard thing for us to keep all the balls in the air and to juggle a large family and air all your commitments. And I absolutely needed him. It's kind of like those Jaredites who said, okay, we'll go, but what are we going to do in those boats? And he said, I'm going to send the wind. You're going to get pushed along. I'll help you. And so I definitely feel like it really developed who I was spiritually, to have to go to him and say, in absolute abject need, please help me. I mean, we've faced all the parental problems that you can think of, and it's difficult, and you need him there. But he was there for us. He absolutely was there for us. I don't know. I didn't recognize it as much as I should have, and been as grateful as I should have been for it.
Jean, I could talk to you for hours.
I know. I'm sorry I've talked so much.
Oh no. I'm loving it. One of my last questions, even though I could keep talking to you for forever.
Yeah, go. I could talk forever too. You can tell. I'm pretty passionate about this.
Yeah. This is such a good topic. Just some pieces of advice you would leave mothers. What are a few last pieces of advice you would like mothers to remember from this book?
Don't do guilt. It doesn't serve anyone. And your negative thoughts about, poor me, I've got to work, and the children are being without. It takes an orchestra to raise a village, an orchestra to raise the family, and you're the leader. So don't do guilt. You'll just hurt yourself, you hurt your children, you hurt your spouse. And then I absolutely believe that God will help you with this and confirm that you're making a right decision. Can confirm that you're making a right decision, and then you go forward with confidence. You'll have your times when it's very hard, but that will sustain you, is that knowledge that God is with you. And then you are capable of anything. That is the other piece I would say. You're fantastic and capable. So live out whatever I talk about having a personal vision in the book, and I have a worksheet about finding your personal vision. You go with prayer and fasting and figure out who you are and what you want to do. And I think once you do that, you go forward with faith.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jean. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Vanessa.